So this is the speech I would have given in London yesterday if we hadn't been so rudely interrupted. My name is Nigel Lutton. I'm a former councillor from Norwich City Council. When I was elected at Norwich City Council, I was a resident and had my osteopathy clinic in the ward in which I stood. For me, this was an essential requirement. Unfortunately, the effects of the unparalleled lockdown of society destroyed my business in Norwich, resulting in my having to move my home and clinic out of the city where rents are considerably cheaper. Whereas before I was able to meet my residents on a daily basis, regularly walking around my ward, this has now proved impossible. I therefore decided to resign as a city councillor. My proudest moment was at the last virtual council meeting I attended, where I called our response to COVID the biggest con in history. To my knowledge, I was the only politician in our country at that time who had actually stood up in defence of the people denied a livelihood and basic health care, those coping with the suicide of loved ones and with the continued curtailment of many NHS services, leading to the unnecessary suffering and even death of hundreds of thousands of people up and down the country. The infringements to our personal liberty have been wholly disproportionate to the threat posed by COVID-19. Walking the streets of Norwich currently resembles a dystopian scene from The Handmaid's Tale. My speech resulted in 6 complaints to the council, but my inbox and social media was flooded with messages of support from people all over the globe who have seen through the con which is being propagandised to take away our basic freedoms. I was accused of bringing the council into disrepute. I believe I was doing what all politicians should be doing, questioning this narrative. I was at this rally with 40,000 friends in Trafalgar Square on Saturday, the 29th of August, where we heard excellent speakers, professors, doctors and nurses from around the world bravely risking their livelihoods to denounce their respective governments and the corruption in the World Health Organization, the mainstream media, and the national health bodies. I myself am being investigated by the General Osteopathic Council for bringing the profession into disrepute, for questioning the corona narrative. I managed to win one complaint in which I had presented information on social media about the dangers of vaccination. Osteopathy was founded by Dr. Still back in the 19th century. He was vehemently opposed to vaccination. My colleagues could hardly say I was being un-osteopathic. Before retraining as an osteopath at the age of 50, I was a primary school head teacher. I watched successive governments over 25 years strip away the joy from our children's education. The last straw for me was Michael Gove telling us he was introducing tests for 4-year-olds. I remember being on a boat on the way to France at the time and shouted at the top of my voice, "Fuck that!" and I resigned. Live on the Nicky Campbell show on Radio 5. I think there's probably still a link to the resignation. If I was still a head teacher, I would refuse to let the NHS administer vaccines in my school. I urge every parent to write to their head teachers and school governors, holding them personally responsible for any damage caused by vaccines administered to their children without parental consent. The current draconian and pointless COVID rules in schools are designed to further intimidate our children into unquestioning conformity and have led to the most stressed generation of young people I have ever seen. Statistics confirmed what I said in my council speech, that suicides are at an unprecedented rate across our country and indeed the world. I expect the figures to increase when furlough is withdrawn and people find themselves without a source of income and with no prospect of finding a new job. Yesterday, I saw 2 posts from friends on Facebook, one of whose 17-year-old daughter had overdosed on paracetamol, and a young man of 20 who had actually killed himself, unable to see a future from themselves. My 79-year-old non-mask wearing mum wanted to be here today to show her support. But after the images of the riot police charging the peaceful crowd last week, I told her it would not be safe for her to come. My mum was born in London during the Blitz, My grandmother told me stories of shaking her fist at a Luftwaffe pilot who flew past her kitchen window just before his plane crashed after dropping his bombs over London. But instead of enjoying her freedom in her twilight years, our government have taken away all the human activities my mum should be enjoying. Going out with friends, theatre trips, dancing, even being hugged by her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and all because they have terrorised the population into fearing a rather nasty flu bug. Councils up and down the country now resemble the Taliban, with their arbitrary and draconian rules in banning singing and social gatherings. Pointless mask wearing, directional arrows on pavements, shops, car parks and pubs, and antisocial distancing. And now the Eton prefects telling us all to be in bed by 10 p.m. I hold our local and national politicians personally responsible for the criminal social damage caused by the lockdown and urge them to reconsider their total compliance with the ridiculous measures that they have introduced. On Thursday this week, along with Piers Corbyn, I was charged with breaking corona guidelines for speaking at a rally in Norwich. I do not know what the charge is, as it's being posted to my home address. Keely Baker, a bold and fearless seeker of the truth, was arrested, held in cells for several hours, had her phone stolen by the police, was banned from Norwich city centre and fined £10,000 for allegedly organising an illegal gathering, which she did not. I'm not anti-police. My daughter is a detective in Norfolk Police Force, but the police behaved like brown shirts last week on Trafalgar Square, and the local police in Norwich have been intimidating me over the past few weeks at our rallies, trying to scare me into silence. I have been ridiculed in the local press and have lost many friends over my stance. I've lost my job as a counsellor as a direct result of lockdown, and my income as an osteopath has plummeted as I've had to rebuild my business from scratch. But just like each and every one of you here today, and the millions of people watching us around the world, I am willing to keep on fighting. I will not be silenced. I will do whatever it takes to win this war on our humanity. We are good, loving, peaceful, and kind beings. Our light will shine so much brighter than their darkness. We are fighting for our humanity, and we will win.